Hey, welcome to a special edition of the Mistake Free Real Estate Podcast, where actually I am the one getting interviewed all about turnkey real estate, new construction, and why you should be investing in real estate. I hope you enjoy this with my friend Greg Helbeck with Real Estate Investing Fast Track. Enjoy.
All right, Mark, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Greg, happy to be here. Thanks for having me, mate.
Awesome. So before we get into your 20-year epic real estate journey, if people are not familiar with you, number one, when did you come to the U.S.? And number two, how did you get into real estate?
Fair. I came over in 1995 on the back of an athletic scholarship. I was a better than average tennis player that allowed me to play Division I tennis for 4 years. Loved that time, traveling with the guys and playing all over the country. It was a great way to see the America on the back of a university that was paying for all the travel expenses. So I had a really fun college experience, stayed on and got my MBA. And while I was getting my MBA, I actually flipped a house, made some money in real estate. And I'm kind of one of those purple Bible kids. You know, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad in 2001 and thought, why get it? I never understood the stock market, but in real estate always just intrigued me. And then that book kind of spoke to me that, yeah, this was what I was going to do for my retirement. But then when I flipped a house and made my first quick buck, I kind of got a taste. And after that, it's just been go, go, go. I actually spent some money, and I think it's probably a valuable lesson for those wanting to get started in real estate. I spent $5,000 on a real estate course of how to buy houses on the courthouse steps. And I went down to Springfield, Missouri, and got kind of schooled in the foreclosure process, came back and really built my business on just being able to locate deals at 20 and 30 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the name of the game, right? I mean, whether you're doing that at the auction or whether you're going direct to seller or buying from wholesalers, I mean, we're getting deals from all over the place. I've actually never bought an auction property just because I guess when I got started back in 16, 17, at least in New York, when I was living there, it was tough. There was 50 buyers there, and, it's really hard to get a good deal when you have 50 people you're competing with, at least in New York.
Yeah, for those that got into it prior to the GFC in 2008, we had a heyday, right? We were buying all the way from 2001 was when I first bought my first acquisition, all the way through 2008. And then obviously, the global financial crisis just smashes the real estate sector. And so all of a sudden, those that knew how to buy houses on the steps were suddenly seeing it rain with foreclosures. And those that were patient enough to hold on just made a killing. So kind of right place, right time. I wasn't having to learn it during the hard spell. I'd learned the game and was very confident at it, and we became the largest buyer of the courthouse steps in the Kansas City marketplace.
That's awesome. That is awesome. That's a great skill set to have. So I actually have a question about the GFC back in the Midwest, because I know I was in middle school when that happened, but I know the coastal markets really got hit pretty hard, like Florida, California, Arizona. But from what I've heard, the Midwest didn't get really mangled as bad because of the lower prices. I mean, what was kind of the deal in Kansas City, which is a pretty, insulated Midwest market? It's very popular there. Like, what was the deal back then in Kansas City?
Yeah, it's a big market. We're just over 2 million people, 2.4, 2.5 in the greater KC metro. I think, so I think we're 25th or 26th on the MSA map. So, good size population, but because land is so plentiful and the cost of living is cheap, real estate has effectively remained very affordable. And back in 2007, 2008, there was a lot of speculation, a lot of builders that were putting in houses, and they got pummeled. So new construction got hit the hardest. But the resale, to your point, the resale and also the rental market, although it was painful at the time for like a year or two, if you had to sell, you would sell for a loss. But those that, were able to kind of make it through that time period by just holding on to their rental properties, it was strong. We didn't see rent rates drop. In fact, if anything, because people were no longer able to own their own home, but they still had to live somewhere, we saw the rental market actually get buoyed by the increase in the number of people wanting to rent. And yeah, we probably saw the retail market on the high. You go from a macro perspective to a regional perspective in Kansas City, but then you've got to go even deeper, right? Because there's markets that were affected far worse, which was kind of in the $1 million plus range. They got hammered maybe 30%. But in the 100 to 150,000 range, really didn't see that much impact. And maybe between 150 and 400,000, they were impacted maybe 10 to 15%. So yeah, all in all, we were pretty well sheltered, and we feel comfortable driving a lot of our investing activity through the Midwest, given that, whatever happens down the road, people always need a place to live. So we feel pretty confident being able to hold on.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially in an area like that where it's not like you're in San Diego or Miami where you have these big upswings and these big downswings. It's a little more steady Eddie over there in the Midwest. And then that actually brings me to the next point. Like your business, SBD Housing, I mean, you guys have been a massive turnkey provider for a while now. So if you don't mind sharing, like, what does your business look like from a high level perspective today? Because you've built this thing up over 20 years, which is, I'm sure, taking a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, so our business, it's fair to call us a turnkey provider. I would say that the biggest thing that we have been able to differentiate ourselves from the competition is by having the best-in-class property management. You cannot call yourself a turnkey provider if you don't have in-house property management. You're just a flipper, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you just flip it and give it on to someone else to manage, there's no incentive to warranty the work, to hold your contractors accountable, to do quality work. So we have prided ourselves and kind of stuck our flag on the proverbial property management mountain. And we are always trying to better ourselves. And we just had our quarterly leadership meeting yesterday when property management was right at the fore of all of our discussion. So yes, we're a turnkey provider. So for those that may not be familiar, what is a turnkey provider? A turnkey provider is simply a real estate investor that is responsible for delivering passive investments to a buyer who wants to be hands-off. So that means in our world that we locate assets, we remodel them or build them. So we deliver and then get them rented out. So we deliver rented out units to an end user buyer that is wanting to build a portfolio of cash flowing assets, just doesn't want to mess with the clunkiness of trying to manage it themselves or trying to find a deal or trying to deal with contractors. So we buy, we rehab, we build new construction, but then before we sell it to our investor base, we always get it rented out and make sure that it's positively cash flowing. And that obviously comes with some guarantees of cash flow on the back end. So it's been a popular model and something that we are, pretty proud of delivering, to our investor base. I'd say that the main pivot we've had over the last 12 months after interest rates spiked is that we're seeing a greater interest in our new construction turnkey than we are in our remodeled. And maybe it's just because we have far less remodeled inventory available. I mean, as you know, inventory is really, really tight. But the attractiveness of new construction, build to rent, fourplexes and duplexes as a turnkey product is something that our investors have just been really, really keen on and have been snatching up.
That's awesome. That actually brings me to some questions I have about that. So when it comes to new construction in Kansas City, are you guys doing infill where you're buying a property, knocking it down, and then building 2, 3, 4 units on that lot? Or are you guys buying raw land or just a vacant lot that might be conforming? Because I've done that too myself, and building on that. Because like an example is like in San Diego, you can buy a bungalow for $600K, knock it down, and then build 5 units on it and pay market value for that bungalow. It's crazy.
Yeah, that is certainly not the model here in Kansas City. We are blessed with being. We don't have the Pacific on our left or the Atlantic on our right. In fact, we have a lot of raw land. We have a lot of farmland. Even if you drive around the city, there's Kansas City as a metro area has many, many suburbs and small cities that kind of make up the metro, and each of them have unique mayoral candidates, each board of directors or the directors of the city that are trying to force it into different areas, and some of them are very pro construction, and multifamily is certainly something that we've heard from most that they are excited about delivering to their residents of their unique city. So new construction is for us taking a paddock of land and turning it into new homes and new construction multifamily. We've partnered with builders to do that successfully. And then doing infill. When I say infill lots, it's more zoned fourplex. We found an area that had 13 lots on it, all consecutive next door, 13 straight lots that we could just go build fourplexes on and kind of infill in the middle of the city of Independence. And that's been a very popular product. So I wouldn't just do it on one. I wouldn't tear something down to build a fourplex. We're certainly not that land constrained in Kansas City. We don't have that kind of constraint on us. However, we're always looking for those kind of opportunities if we can find raw land that is zoned for a fourplex or a duplex already.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially with the new construction, from what I've seen, I don't have any new construction rentals per se, but I would imagine that when you're selling that asset to the investor, there's going to be much less maintenance for a while. All the CapEx is done. I'm sure you can guarantee it. And you don't have to worry about all these little, like I manage my 5 rentals on I have one property manager for this problem property, but I always say it's a great business, but there's always something, with an
Yeah.
old property. So I'm sure with the new construction, you can deliver a much better product to people where they don't really need to worry about all these like little odds and end maintenance things coming up, which can be a pain in the butt.
Yeah, no doubt. Our builders stand behind a 12-month warranty as well as a 210 warranty, 2 years on the major mechanicals, and then 10 years on the other things. So we stand behind the product. It's really, really strong. To your point, vacancy and maintenance are the two big killers of cash flow for rental property. So we always preach that, and the new construction is effectively eliminating one of those line items. And quite honestly, the way that they've been getting snapped up because there's such a lack of new construction in this marketplace, it's actually helped reduce vacancy as well because people appreciate new product and don't really necessarily want to move. So they've been getting snapped up, and although it's kind of new to us, I mean, our new construction that we've been doing has only been getting leased out in the past 12 months. But what we're seeing is it getting hopped up really quickly. In fact, we're pre-leasing most of the inventory. So I see it decreasing both vacancy and maintenance, which was a nice benefit. I didn't see the vacancy factor being significantly less than single family homes, but I think it's going to play out that way.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Especially too, that just a lot of people, they want the new stuff, right? Like homeowners want the new house, the investors want the newer, apartments or the 2, 3, and 4 families they're getting. So when it comes to the turnkey business, like I've always been interested in it. Like, what do you guys do when you buy the property? You're either building it or renovating it. What do you do to find these buyers? Are you putting these on the MLS and selling them? Do you have like a buyer's list like a wholesaler would? Like, what are you guys doing to always know that you have a buyer for this product once it's finished?
Yeah, so that's twofold. The first part of that kind of goes back to the GFC, actually. The global financial crisis back in the day is where I started this turnkey operation before I even knew what turnkey was. When the market tanked in 2010, not only was the US dollar on sale, but also the US housing market. So the housing market crashes, which brings down the US dollar. So suddenly I have, friends and family in Australia, New Zealand, and then more in, my network was fairly worldwide. I started getting approaching investors from all these other countries saying, hey, come take advantage of the US housing market and the weak US dollar. And so they were kind of double dipping at the time, and it played out just perfectly. They basically bought, and some of them still own assets here. I've got one investor that still owns about 15 doors, but most of them, were pretty content to sell out when they got that massive fluctuation on the back end. So they've come in and bought hundreds and hundreds of doors in Kansas City. We had one family that came in, and one of the wealthiest families in New Zealand was one of my clients, and they came in and just started buying up, as many as they could get their hands on. And so that when you have international investors that were excited about our product, they'd never come to the country. So suddenly you've got to set up banking relationships, you've got to set up an LLC for them, you've got to set up accountants, you've got to make sure that they have dialed in property management and all the contractors. So it's all on us. So effectively, we were able to, just kind of clip the ticket all along the way, right? You get a small amount for buying it, you get a small amount for managing the construction, you get a small amount for managing the asset post-construction. And so it was a neat little revenue stream in that you were able to really satisfy all of their needs. But I suddenly had to grow these different tranches of the company, different departments as they grew over time, as we became bigger at property management, as we became bigger on the construction side of things, as we had to acquire more properties. But the buyers list, to your point, is something that you're always looking at doing. And because we were catering to an investor that wasn't even coming to the country,
Yeah.
for a California or Floridian investor that says, hey, or New York, say, hey, I can't get a deal in New York City, but I'd love to buy some turnkey assets. When you meet a doctor or a dentist or a lawyer, an accountant that was referred in, it's pretty easy to, if they're like, well, hey, I'm not going to be in Kansas City anytime soon. Will I be okay? I'm like, mate, I've got clients that have never even been to America, so don't worry about it. So yeah, it's largely been a referral-based business. I think once you have a quality product and a quality property management team in place, that's the key to success in turnkey. And the biggest barrier to entry, quite frankly, because until you get to about 300 doors, it's really property management is a thin margin game across the board. And so until you get north of 300 doors, you're really not making any money. So that's kind of the biggest barrier is you almost have to outsource it when you're getting started. So that leads yourself to really not be considered a turnkey provider. You're really just selling assets. But if someone were considering the turnkey space, I would say focus on getting the best deals first, providing a great service to your buyer, throw them over to the best property manager you can find who's actually going to be really, really good at what they do, but with an open ticket that once you get north of 300, then you'll pull them back and start, managing the assets once you get north of 300 doors, and you can start doing it yourself at that time.
And then, you have enough revenue coming in where there's some scale there, and you can start to like legitimately monetize every vertical there because, up until, because like you said, I mean, what's property management, 10, 15% of the rent. So if you have 15 properties, not even, you got 15 properties. It's like, at 300, the numbers start to get interesting, So that brings me to my next question is like, when you're selling to turnkey investors, whether they're out of the country or out of the local area, what are some basic numbers that an investor, I know obviously everyone's going to be a little bit different. What are some basic, I guess, cash on cash numbers these investors are looking for? Because I'm sure most of these people are buying these things with bank loans. Maybe they're putting 20, 30% down, and then they're going to be basing their ROI on the cash they're putting in, not necessarily buying the building in cash.
Great question. And that answer, if you asked me that 3 years ago, I was pretty set. 7, 14, 300. We could say we'll sell at a 7 cap, 14% cash on cash, and $300 a month of positive cash flow every time. Otherwise, we will not sell you the house.
Yeah.
But when interest rates go from 4%, Greg, to 7.8 or 8%, they've doubled in the last 12 months. Real estate is not wavering in its productivity and its efficiency and its delivering quality appreciation and all of the 4 pillars of real estate that we talk about, which we can go into detail if you want to. However, the cash flow has been impacted. If you just say for every $100,000 that 3% or let's say 4%, let's say you could get a loan at 4% and now you're at 8%. Same asset, same purchase price. Real estate has not come down in value. But for every $100,000, you're paying 4% more per year, which is $4,000. Well, as you well know, on a single-family home, you're doing well to cash flow $4,000 in a calendar year. So now suddenly, cash-on-cash return when you're buying at a 6.5 cap, but your interest rate's at an 8 cap. The more you lever, the less your cash-on-cash is actually impacted. It's actually the reverse effect. So the answer to your question is cash-on-cash is not pretty right now. However, you would be short-sighted to consider that cash on cash is the only avenue for success in real estate. There's 3 other pillars, right? There's the pillar of appreciation, real estate going up in value. The pillar of depreciation, the tax benefits. To anyone out there that's a real estate investor, that is a real estate professional, the government gives you such a massive advantage to write off paper losses, because that's all depreciation is paper losses, over the rest of your income to the tune of 100% of your income you can write off. It's a massive opportunity that people should be taking advantage of. And then the third pillar is scale, the ability to leverage and use other people's money to go buy. Interest rates are 8% right now, or 7%, or whatever you can buy it down to. We've been able to consistently get our investors in a lot cheaper than that. However, it's still up there. But we always say you marry the house and you date the rate. So you want to buy the house that you're in forever and ever. But the rate, you can always buy it down. If rates come back down, you just, you say goodbye to the 8% girl and you go pick up the 6 or 5% girl, So
100%.
It's unique. And then obviously cash flow is still positive. We have a lot of people paying cash for their assets. And, that's another misnomer. People that are buying real estate for the cash flow now are a little bit short-sighted. Even when they were kicking off $300 a month of positive cash flow, look, I mean, 300, even if you own 10 assets, is $3,000 a month going to change anyone's life? No. The fully levered 80% loan to value mortgage is going to encumber real estate to such a level that you're not going to positively cash flow anyway. It does well to offset all of your maintenance and expenses and everything like that. So it's nice to have a little bit of positive income, but you can't live on it. The people that do well in real estate are twofold. Those that buy and hold forever so that they eventually pay off their assets where there's no debt on them, and then they have massive cash flow from them once they're fully paid off. Or more commonly, those that buy, and hold. They scale. They put as much real estate. They put 20% down and scale with the 80%. And then, 4, 5, 6 years later, when they've appreciated in value, they do a cash out refi and they suck out $1 million and they go buy more and they keep scaling and growing their portfolio. That's the way that, the cash out refi is a beautiful game that you play and should also be considered when people are thinking about the cash flow nature of real estate as well.
You just hit all those points on the head that are complete, the golden nuggets, because that's why I buy rentals. The cash flow, I always say, there's properties I have that basically break even. And the last refi I did was at 7%, and it property basically breaks even after maintenance and everything like that. Let's say on paper it's like $200 a month, but really it's not.
Yeah.
I'm in it for the depreciation, especially with the active income, the cost segregation property, when we're front loading that depreciation. And then even these properties that I've been buying, and I don't have nearly as much experience as you, is like I'm buying these properties at a wholesale price. I'm doing the BRRRR strategy. I'm refining them. And, on these refis, I'm getting this money tax-free. And the tenants are paying the mortgage down every month. The property's going up because I like to buy in certain areas in New York where I'm from. And I know that it's like pretty high appreciation. And like the three out of the 5 property, one of them I own free and clear. The other one is a 30-year mortgage. The other 3, I have them on 15-year mortgages with a credit union. So in less than 15 years, in theory, those will be paid off and those values will be through the roof. And that's what gets me excited about the real estate. And that's why these, people listening who just go for cash flow, they're, like you said, they're really short-sighted and they don't see the big picture of all the benefits that it really offers.
Greg, I rest easy at night knowing that I've never met a 70 or 80-year-old person with gray hair that says, Mark, I look back and I wish I didn't buy all that real estate that I still own 30 years later. I mean, it just, it's like, it's so seldom you meet those people. When you meet someone that truly owns a ton of real estate, they have the biggest smile and the lightest shoulders you've ever seen because the cash flow is so strong. And I have surrounded myself with people that have hundreds and hundreds and thousands of rental properties. And I've yet to meet someone who regrets the homes that they bought, last year, let alone, 10 or 20 years ago. I mean, homes double in value every 20 years in most metros. It's just a fact. And, those that say it won't happen have not studied real estate in the same way. There's an economist called Bruce Norris, which you should give a follow to. If
he's out in California, right?
Yep. So Bruce has come and spoke to us, and I've got to know him. And he says, Mark, a house is like a box of commodities. If you think about it, there's light fixtures, there's faucets, there's plumbing, there's PVC, there's shingles from the roof, there's wood, there's sheetrock, there's paint. And over time, could you see that paint may go up in value? Oh, of course, paint's going to go up in value. Okay, to deliver the paint to the job site, is gas going to go up in value? Of course, gas is going to go up. And so you start looking at all of these commodities that are inside a house. The house has to go up in value, because you're sitting on the box of commodities. To replace them costs you way more. So it's going to be buoyed by the commodities of what's inside it. And so if you look back, I mean, I had dinner last night with an 88-year-old gentleman at our country club, a dear friend of mine, and the first house he bought was for $2,600. And I said, don't you wish you still owned about 10 of those? I mean, it's just insane what this value of the home is worth. Actually, I take that back. I think it was his parents. I take that back. It was his parents that he said bought their home in Highland Park, Dallas. For all you Dallas, Texas people.
That's like Beverly Hills.
Oh, my gosh. And they bought it for $2,600.
Oh,
so
my God.
Again, it's insane how much real estate goes up in value. It's the easiest, dumbest, but most patient way that you have to do it. I say that the greatest sign of maturity is delayed gratification, and I think if you can just delay gratification for 10 years, you buy now and just hold and don't expect anything from your properties other than trying to manage them effectively, you can't lose.
It's impossible. I remember reading one of the first real estate books I ever read. It's called The Millionaire Real Estate Investor with Gary Keller.
Yep.
And the premise of that book is buy and hold, right? He talks about flipping and assignments and all that stuff. And that's great. It's great to build active income. Obviously, you need active income in order to get some big passive income, and it certainly helps. But there are some properties, Mark, that I have fixed and flipped, especially prior to COVID. If I were to keep, there's an example. This was actually after COVID. I bought this house at a great price. Actually, my acquisitions guy was his neighbor's house. And I sold that house for $370. I think it was $375. And that was like full ARV. That property today is $525. And that was 2 years ago. Isn't that insane?
It's all over. Yeah, it is. It is. I thought we tried to time. My wife still hasn't forgiven me. We had a second home down in Florida, down in the Bradenton area, and
Okay.
I thought I was being smart. We built it. We actually had one down there. We 1031 and kind of went from one investment property to another. When we sold that home and we threw it into the next one and we built brand new. We built it brand new for like 550, right on the river. Is a nice home down there. And then we sold in 2020, trying to time, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen with
Yeah,
COVID,
no
and
idea.
real estate's going crazy. Let's take advantage. And I
Yeah.
think we sold it for like 720. And then I looked, now it's like 1.1. I'm
Yeah.
like, are you kidding me? Like we didn't even, we sold because we weren't going to use it as much, but now I'm like, I could have just not even used it and it would have gained $400,000.
You gotta pay the mortgage the whole time, right?
Yes. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Oh, it's crazy. And that's the thing I realize now. It's like there are deals that I come by and I'm like, yes, we can fix and flip this for 50, but I'm going to keep this as a rental and I'm going to, suck it up, as they say, and make my $100 a month of cash flow. And then in 20 years, I'll be thanking myself. You know what I mean? And it's a delayed gratification thing. And people, it's a hard skill, right, to develop. And it's not easy. But if you have that long-term mindset, I mean, with the real estate, it's incredible. I mean, there's some mutual friends we have. It's just they have all these properties, and it's like, no matter what happens, you have that nest egg to lay on, and it's the equity, it's everything. I mean, there's the four pillars. So, the takeaway for the listeners here is you got to get serious about buying assets, and especially too, another thing I tell a lot of people, and I'm sure you see this as well. When you develop the skill sets of finding deals, analyzing deals, negotiation skills, and a lot of those skill sets are used to build a wholesaler or fix and flip business. Now you have these skills to deploy into keeping these assets, because a lot of people, they just get in this transactional game,
Yeah.
and it can be great, but you have these valuable skills now that you can use to develop your rental portfolio and just really catapult your wealth.
Yeah, the government is literally sitting there saying, thank you for flipping. We're going to tax you heavily.
Oh,
Right. But if you decide, if you're patient and you're mature, we will never tax you. If you buy and hold, we won't tax you. In fact, we'll try and stop you from your active income. We'll give you a reduction over here as well. I mean, it's the biggest no-brainer once it's pointed out to you, but sometimes it takes you getting knocked over the head. So hopefully someone who's listening is like, man, that guy with that silly accent from New Zealand is telling me to buy real estate. I might listen to him. No, but I would also say, Greg, it begs, as in anything with life, like what's the catch, right? So what is the catch? How could real estate be so easy? I would say that there's two things that could totally scuttle your or maybe three things that could totally scuttle your whole operation. The first one is if you get in over here, if you try and leverage too much and you can't, if you're not making an active income and you can't afford the house payment, don't get in over your head, right? Like work hard, make active money. Obviously be diligent with having savings that is over here, having an emergency fund. Your active income is designed to invest strategically over here into your passive income assets, but don't spend everything you have and then wake up like, oh, I had a bad month wholesaling houses and now I can't afford to make my house payment. So that would be the first thing, is just don't be dumb.
yeah.
But the real two things as far as investing that I think could scuttle you is, the first is making sure that you buy in a good area that's going to go up in value. If you buy in a rough area because it's the quote unquote the only thing you can afford, you're going to get crushed. Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
So you've got to buy in an area with a good school district that will stand the test of time, that will go up in value. And so that's the second thing. And then the third thing is having dialed in property management. You cannot mismanage an asset. So vacancy and maintenance will kill a landlord quicker than you can say, jackrabbit. So if you want to make sure that you have a safe, secure, reliable asset, buy in a good area and pay for a property manager if you're no good at it yourself. Do not self-manage and then complain when it's not cash flowing because they're not paying you and you're not holding them accountable and you're not evicting them quick enough and you don't know the foreclosure laws, and then they're suing you because you sent them a 3-day when you're a day late and the attorney's saying you didn't send them the right documents. Yeah. Now you're trying to falsely evict someone, and all of that has to be professionally managed. And I think in the same way that I allow the pilot to fly my plane and allow the dentist to drill on my teeth, I'm not trying to do it myself.
Yeah.
I am not going to do it myself. I have a property management team in place that manages all of my rentals for me.
That's so true. It's funny. I literally paid the property management bill this morning with a smile on my face.
There you go.
I got the QuickBooks invoice and I was like, oh, yes, the 31st of the month. I get to have them manage this lovely asset, and it's so true, because I see so many people, they buy a property or maybe 3 properties and they do it the wrong way. They have this bad taste in their mouth. I actually have a friend, a quick story. So I own a condo in this kind of a janky facility, janky complex, but it's in a good area. So he buys a condo at a similar price that I did. And he got scared because there was an issue with the building. And I said, listen, Matt, and I'll mention his name, not his last name. I said, listen, Matt, do me a favor. Don't sell the building. I said, if you sell this, you're going to just be kicking yourself because there's only so many units in here, right? And it's right by the freeway. And he goes on the market. He sells it. He's in contract to sell it now. And I'm like, man, you shouldn't sell this property. But he couldn't see past the slight obstacle of fixing what he needed to fix in order to get the property correctly rented. And he was just looking at the problem and not looking at the long-term benefits of it. And he'll eventually learn. But he called me first and I told him, like, dude, you shouldn't sell this. Like, why would you sell this? I mean, you're going to get taxed. It's a short-term cap gain. I'm like, there's a laundry list of items I can mention to him, but he wasn't seeing past the slight obstacle, and that's what I see a lot of investors do. They get kicked in the teeth on a couple properties. They don't understand that happens to everybody. And if they could just get some systems involved to optimize their portfolio, in 20 years, they're going to say, oh my gosh, I wish I bought 10 more of these.
Preach. I love it. Buy and hold.
Yeah, exactly. And he's a young guy. He's younger. He's 2 years younger than me. And I'm like, you already got a head start. You shouldn't be selling these properties. You got enough money in the bank with all your house flips to not be selling these properties, but he'll learn eventually. So, Mark, let me ask this as we start to wind the show down. What does the future look like for SBD Housing? Where do you guys want to take the business? I know you guys are doing turnkey, I believe, in a couple different areas besides Kansas City, right? You're in Alabama and a couple other markets. I heard.
Yeah, that's right. So, we see increased demand for our product offering, but our commitment to new construction just kind of aligns with one of our core values, which is quality. Quality assets in quality areas. And so our clientele, as we continue to level up our investor base with, more higher income, high net worth individuals that value their time and are willing to pay us a fair rate to manage their assets for them, we see new construction kind of being the road for us. So that means more builder relationships, more JV deals, more land acquisition, trying to scale trying to scale our remodeled operation was a challenge. I'm not going to say it was a big miss. I mean, we certainly did it well, but man, it was a challenge. If you consider every house that you're going to remodel or build, you've got 500 or let's say even easier 100. You've got 100 decisions to make on every house on knock that wall down or not. What are you going to do on the ceiling? What are you going to do over here? What faucet? What cabinet? What countertop? Etc. Even at 100, if you're doing 100 doors, suddenly you've got 10,000 decisions that you've got to make on this annual basis. Versus if you're just doing new construction, you go and you make 100 decisions, and then you just go boom, 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 and knock it all out, and you've only made 100 decisions. So it's just less brain dead and easier to manage with one project manager over the entire site. So we are, now that we see the appetite, and we looked at new build single family like the funds are doing, but quite frankly, it just doesn't pencil. It doesn't cash flow. And although the cash flow is not the main reason for investing, it's still a benefit that you can get it to at least be cash flow positive, even if it's nominal amount. You shouldn't be having to top up your asset every single month like you do and have to in Australia and New Zealand, where they call it negative gearing, where you literally buy an asset, it loses money every single year from a cash flow perspective, but it doubles in value in 5 years rather than 10. I mean, it's just crazy the appreciation you get down under. But that's not the play here. So with us, we went in and said, look, if we can do more in scale of these new construction assets by partnering with builders where they do all the build, that they're qualified. There's a great book out there for those that are that enjoy reading called Who, Not How.
I love that book. Dan Sullivan.
And, I suddenly got to the point of not how can I become the best builder, but who are the best builders I can partner with?
Yeah.
And so it changes your mindset. And so you're like, look, if I can deliver them the assurity of close and say, hey, look, if you go and build me 20 duplexes, I will buy them all. I will rent them all. I'll create a HOA to make sure that the trash service and the lawn service is on the same day every single week. So it's a nice clean community with not a bunch of different signs up, a bunch of different trash cans. It's a nice clean community. And if we can promise you that, will you give us at a 5 or 6% discount? When they discount their price by 5 or 6% and we make a little margin on the back end, there's room for us to come in and add value. And again, I'm trying to build this massive annuity for the company that is the property management fee income. If I could grow that to be 2,000 doors in the next 5 or 10 years, I'd be loving it.
Absolutely. And you'll certainly get there for sure. And you made a good point too. Like when you're building, I don't know new construction as well as you do, but if your cost to build the asset, right, is similar-ish, maybe slightly higher, but that asset you can get 4 streams of income out of it versus one. Not only are you protecting the investor, because if one tenant doesn't pay, you have 3 others paying. It just makes more sense. With a single family, like I said, you're going to get one rent, and it's probably going to be similar, maybe a little bit cheaper to build, but you got one tenant there and one income stream versus 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So
no, it's strong. Multifamily is a wonderful play. We've seen the benefit on it. So new construction multifamily is where we're headed. Duplexes, 4plexes, 6plexes potentially. And just looking at what the city, we're trying to drive value. I mean, our 2 core competencies at SBD, we are here to simplify real estate investing and to elevate communities. That's what we want to do. So we go into those communities and say, where would you like more housing? Where do you want affordable housing? Where do you want there to be some new construction? We go in there and solve problems for these communities, these cities that we operate in, which is lack of affordable housing, lack of housing in general, let alone affordable, but lack of affordable housing and new construction and lack of rental property. So we go in there and solve those and drive value to the community.
That's excellent. And I'm excited to follow you on your journey as you continue to do this. It's awesome to see from afar. So Mark, we covered a lot of ground today. It's been awesome chatting with you. If people want to, number 1, connect with your company, and then number 2, connect with you on social media, what's the best website for your company, and then the best way for them to follow you on social media?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So I'm at Marck Lautour on socials, and we put out YouTube, TikTok, Insta content on a pretty regular basis. Pete Francis is our social media manager, and he does a great job at that. You can go to SBDhousing.com to kind of see a little bit more about our turnkey operation and maybe check out some of the product that we have delivered lately. And then I do have a book out there called Mistake-Free Real Estate. You can jump on Amazon, Google Mistake-Free Real Estate. It's the passive investor's guide to winning with rental property. So if you do have someone listening that says, look, Mark, it sounds like property management scares me. I don't want to do it on my own. I want to have someone manage it for me, and my dollar would go further in the Midwest. Then read the book and see how you can jump in with a turnkey provider.
That's awesome. We'll make sure we have all that in the show notes. And Mark, once again, I do appreciate your time. This was a fun. I could have talked to you for 4 hours. So we'll wrap the show up, and we'll make sure everything's in the show notes. And thank you so much for being a guest today on the Real Estate Investing Fast Track.
Thank you, Greg.